We are often told that we should be futuristic. We should think about future. We should always plan about future. But you know what's the sad part? Although all our parents, all our teachers, all our colleagues say the same thing, we hardly execute this plan. We always live into the present, we think about past, and we hardly think about the future. So why not take this opportunity over here to think of the future together? So let's just imagine we all are in 2050. Let's imagine together, right? A lot of developments have actually taken place. Well, a lot of deadly diseases have actually found the cure. Maybe cancer has been cured by now. Not just that, Wi-Fi has now reached the most remote areas of our country. And not just that, we have probably colonized Mars. Just like this. And, uh, and not just that, a lot of great things have happened. We have flying cars, we have all together a lot of developments. But wait a second. Everything cannot be that rosy, right? After all, Disney की picture थोड़ी है कि सब कुछ अच्छा होता जाएगा. There would be a lot of dark areas also in 2050. For instance, there could be a lot of such kind of pandemic also happening at that point of time. So since we are imagining that we are in 2050, just imagine a new sort of pandemic has now entered our era. And this time, it is not just affecting the immune system of older people. It is now attacking the immune system of even the younger generation. The younger generation is baffled. They are not able to survive. They are not able to think what to do over here. And not just that, a lot of other things have also started taking place. Meanwhile, the blue chip stocks have actually started falling, are now going crazily up. And you must be wondering, what the hell is wrong with this guy? Why suddenly he is talking about stock markets? And that's precisely because I belong to the same profession. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Abhishek, a trader come investor who has more than 11 years of experience into the market, and of course, I run my own YouTube channel, a way to give back to the society. And today, together, we are actually going to look after 2050 and how the things are actually going to go ahead. Since we already talked about pandemic, don't be surprised if we are going to have similar kind of situation also in 2050. And let's see what would happen in 2050. Don't you agree a lot of people would be scared, right? A lot of people will be scared. A lot of stock market players will be also scared. But can we get some learnings out of our past? Of course, yes. Because something similar happened 3 decades back where everyone was forced to wear masks. And at that point of time also the stock markets were falling like a deck of cards. While a lot of people were confused, there were some wise investors. And you know what these wise investors were doing? They were actually grabbing pharmaceutical stocks. And you must be wondering, they must have done some sort of maths or some sort of fundamental analysis or some sort of jargons they must have used. But wait, they didn't do anything of that sort. They were simply aware. With their awareness, they realized that whenever there would be a pandemic, whenever there would be a disease, of course, who is going to find the solution to this problem? It would be the pharmaceutical companies. The pharmaceutical companies are going to come with immunity boosters. The pharmaceutical companies are the ones which are going to come with the vaccines. And they are the ones who are actually going to come up with the medicines. So don't you think by purely using our awareness, we can find similar situations in the future also? And that's precisely what we got to do in 2050. Now, since I actually talked about pandemic, don't be surprised when you see rise of certain other industry. And which would be that industry? Of course, fitness industry. All around the year, we hardly think about our fitness. We hardly go for yoga. We hardly take any sort of measures for our health. But the moment there's some sort of pandemic happening, some sort of disease which attacks everyone, we all get cautious. Oh bhai, we have to go and do our yoga classes. We have to go for jogging. We have to go for the gym. And that certainly will give rise to even fitness industry in 2050. And in stock markets, you know what happens? People always reach the excess of their emotions. And what happens with that? Some stocks actually keep on going up and up and up, and rationality is actually kicked out of the window. People start valuing some companies equivalent to the entire sector. So now we need to think for a while. Has this thing ever happened in the past? And the answer is yes, several times. To build a context, let me tell you something similar happened around 2007 and 2008 across the globe. There was one particular sector, today we call it the real estate sector, which was booming. You would be surprised and astounded to know the kind of valuations people were giving to real estate stocks and real estate. You know what? 100 rupee real estate was getting quoted at 10,000 rupees. And come on, we should all admit that this kind of insanity, this kind of craziness is never sustainable. But what happens is we all get carried away with our emotions, and people kept on buying real estate and real estate stock only when one day, all the dreams got shattered. Because sooner or later, things had to fall apart. What happened to the investors who were actually buying real estate stocks at all the levels? All their hopes got dashed, shattered. They couldn't even think of what to do now. And you know, something similar might happen even in 2050. So what should we do? Sometimes it's better to use our common sense. If we are applying our common sense, we should understand that everything cannot go completely in the linear fashion. At some point of time, there would be a pause in the flying of these kind of stocks. And just applying our common sense, we can avoid investing into these kind of stocks. The moral over here could be very simple, that sometimes money saved is money made, and it makes sense to sit around in the sidelines. Now, since we are talking about financial markets, stock markets, we cannot deny that these financial markets and stock markets not only affect our health, the fitness industry, but there's one more area they start affecting. And there is one word for it, and we all call it the scam. We cannot deny that financial markets are always filled with something called scams. And on, decades and decades, every decade we have found some of the big scam happening around in the financial markets, which completely blows away people's mind. Now let's assume something similar would happen in 2050, and that there's a high likelihood that this is going to happen. The only difference always is that the scale always keeps on rising. And this time in 2050, don't be surprised if trillions of dollars would be on stake. People might be losing a hell lot of money. And you know what happens on stock markets? What are the implications on stock markets? Stock market reacts very badly. Previously, when similar kind of scams has unearthed, few decades back, the stock markets used to fall by 30% from the peak. Later on, they fell by 40% from the peak. And recently, in the last year, when the pandemic hit, they actually fell close to 50% from the peak. So don't be surprised if in 2050, they fall by 70%. There's a possibility it might happen. So what to do in that kind of situation? For that also, we need to dig a little in the past, look into the history and find some solutions. Well, in the past, whenever these kind of things have happened, two dominant emotions of human beings come into picture. And what are those? Fear and greed. Of course, we all human beings are always made and driven by these two emotions. It always swings like a pendulum between these two emotions. People get scared, baffled, what to do. But you know what wise investors do? Wise investors sit on the sideline when everyone is greedy. When everyone is saying, right from your panwala to any other person is saying, just buy, just buy, just buy. They sit on the sidelines. They sit on the cash. But when everyone is fearful, when everyone is selling every good quality stocks, these wise investors grab this as an opportunity, and they are the ones who make the greatest wealth out of the stock markets. So even in 2050, if similar kind of things actually happen, all we got to do is we need to stay calm. We need to understand how to profit from this greed and fear. And guys, when we are talking about scams, let's admit it, it's impossible to have any sort of scam without the involvement of highly influential people, powerful people. Actually, we are kind of puppets for a few people who are actually dominating the entire financial markets, and I believe all would agree on that. So it's quite evident at that point of time in 2050 also, we would find such few people who would be actually doing all these things. And there's an interesting part about these people. They always try to create a mountain out of the mole. They try to evade such kind of issues. They try to create a lot of political drama. And this gives rise to one concept. In stock markets, we call it volatility. And for a layman who doesn't understand what is volatility, it's just like up and down. The stocks go crazy, up, down, sideways. And this simply confuses each and every investor. Now let's again dig back into the past and see if something similar has actually happened into the past. Well, yes, in past also, whenever there is a sort of political drama which is taking place in the stock markets, people get confused. In times of volatility, what a normal person does is he simply keeps on selling the stocks, buying the stocks, selling the stocks, buying the stocks, because everyone is confused. But you know what a wise investor or a trader does? That person knows that historically it has been proven that the volatility is not permanent. It is going to be a temporary phase. And it's the volatility which becomes the best friend of an investor, because that is where they can actually get a bargain on good quality stocks. And anyone for that matter, who invests in these kind of situations is eventually the person who makes the biggest chunk of wealth through stock markets. So even when highly influential people or any sort of political drama happens, we got to do this thing. With that being said, you know what? English language has got 26 alphabets, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, etc. So in order to understand and comprehend the entire English subject, we need to understand this A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z. But you know what? To crack the psychological part and the financial part of stock markets, you just need to understand 4 letters, which is A, B, C, D. Again perplexed, again confused, what is this A, B, C, D? Well, we just discussed it right now. Let me elaborate. Well, A stands for awareness. You have to be aware. We talked about it in the first story. B stands for boldness or the courage. Courage to hold when everything is falling. That's precisely what you got to do. C, that stands for common sense. We just discussed about the real estate instance. And then D, dealing with fear and greed. So if you know these A, B, C, and D, it would be very easy and convenient to sail through this turmoil of stock markets and all these wild emotions. And with that being said, now that we understand that yes, there is an A, B, C, D out there and a lot of things can actually take place, we have come up to a conclusion over here that the only thing which is certain in this market is uncertainty. We need to embrace uncertainty, and uncertainty will definitely give rise to a lot of risk. But as a very big gentleman said, that risk hai to isk hai. And that is something which we also need to follow. It's those times of risky days, it's those times of volatility, it's those times when there is turmoil on the stock market. That is the time when you don't need to lose patience. You have to have patience, you have to have your conviction, you have to have your courage, you have to have your common sense, and then you need to hold on to your stocks. That's exactly how you make money. And as I always say, stock markets are just like amoeba. They keep on changing their shapes every now and then. The only thing which we can do to survive in this stock market is to adapt with these kind of things which are happening into the market, because this uncertainty is always going to prevail. And after understanding the entire ABCD, now we can say how we can actually make profit in stakes through uncertainty. Thank you so much.